Hi, everyone. This is Mary Smith. I am the founder of Chaos Free Family and the head coach over here at Chaos Free ADHD. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, registering and joining us. Just a few housekeeping details. Please keep yourself on mute. We will have a question and answer portion of this presentation at the end. I think Cindy said the presentation is probably going to go about 35 minutes. And then they're going to open it up for questions to answer all your questions. So let me just turn it over to Cindy Palmer, and let me tell you guys how long I have waited for this kind of presentation to bring to you guys, because I always have people who they're always looking for tutors, and they always say they have great tutors, and they're not tutors who learned about ADHD after 2013. So sometimes what they know and how they're approaching it is just not fitting with that neurodevelopmental paradigm. And so these guys know what they're talking about, and I am just so proud and pumped to have them here. So Cindy, do you want to go ahead and take it away and just introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Hi, everybody. Just want to make sure you can hear me. All good?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, awesome. So I'm Cindy Palmer. I'm the owner of STEM Tutoring and been doing this work directly through STEM for about 10 years now. And prior to that, I've been at this student support system mode for, oh no, this is going to date me, but it's been a very long time. It's been about 25, almost 30 years now. So, love to meet with parents, especially those that are in the throes of supporting their own students through math, because it can be a rough road. And we've helped a lot of parents in and through that situation. So, I'm really happy to be here tonight.
Great, thank you. And Emma.
All right, yeah, my name is Emma. I work with Cindy at STEM Tutoring. I have been in the tutoring world in some way or another for about 8 years. Also worked in higher education for about 5. Have my master's of education, so I'm a big learning nerd. And just, yeah, excited to share some information about dyscalculia with you all today. So, as we mentioned, we're going to talk about dyscalculia, some of the symptoms, struggles, some examples of how it might show up. We're going to share some 4 C's to parenting students with math struggles, and then talk about the handoff. So when you're looking for some more support for either your child or maybe a student that you work with, what should you look for, making sure that you found some good support. So in terms of dyscalculia generally, excuse me, it is a learning disability in math, prevalence of about 5 to 7% of students, which is about actually the same number of folks who have dyslexia. So if that gives you a little bit of a better idea of the scale. Folks with dyscalculia might have difficulties with number sense, understanding magnitude of numbers, remembering and understanding symbols like plus sign, minus sign, that kind of thing. Have some memory issues, but particularly just with numbers. Not really broader memory issues, but specifically things with numbers, and we'll get into some examples of that. And they can also have some issues recognizing patterns. There's kind of an interesting visual spatial element to dyscalculia along with kind of the numbers. So to get into some examples to show you what we mean, one thing that folks with dyscalculia can struggle with is subitizing, which is just the fancy word for being able to look at a group of things and just kind of know how many there are. So most of us can do this with like 5 to 7 things. So if there are 5 coffee cups on your desk, you can just look at it and be like, that's 5. You don't have to count individually. But someone with dyscalculia will probably have to do that individual counting every single time. Another example of something that you might see with dyscalculia is someone struggling to correlate a symbol, a number, and a word. So for example, we see 3 dots, we know it's the number 3 and also the word 3, and those are all representing the same thing. For someone with dyscalculia, that relationship can be harder. Maybe the number 3 and the word 3 don't quite trigger the same thing in their mind. Students with dyscalculia can also struggle to understand the order of numbers or like the magnitude. For a lot of us, we have kind of internalized this number line where we just have a sense that 3 is greater than 0 and -4 is less than 0. We kind of have that information in our brains. But for a student with dyscalculia, that number line is kind of fuzzy. It's a little harder to draw on. It's harder to kind of remember that like one number can be greater or less than another number. That like mental information isn't quite there. And finally, students with dyscalculia can struggle to put kind of math facts into their long-term memory. So most students will see certain basic math enough times that they'll retrieve it pretty quickly. So for an example, over time, a student knows that 5 times 2 always equals 10. They see 5 times 2, it equals 10 over and over and over. And eventually that information just gets kind of encoded in their long-term memory. So when they see 5 times 2, they're just like, it's 10. They don't really have to think about it or do the calculation. But students with dyscalculia always have to do the calculation. That math fact has a really hard time sticking in their brain. So the impact of that can be looking at a problem like this. For a lot of us, we might be able to look at this and go, oh, it's 13. 5 times 2 is 10, 3 more is 13. But for someone with dyscalculia, there are a lot of different things going through their mind. So they might be like, oh, this symbol, is this an X? No, that means to multiply. And multiplying means we have 5 2 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, that's 10. Okay, now there's the second part of the problem. And this means to add, which is putting together. So I have to add 3 to that first number that I just calculated. But I don't remember what it was. What was it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then 3 more, 11, 12, and 13. So instead of just looking pretty quickly and going, oh, I know 5 times 2 is 10, 3 more is 13, there's all these kind of other mental steps along the way. So when you consider that, imagine having to do this whole worksheet. That already makes me kind of want to throw up looking at all those numbers. And I don't have dyscalculia. So, if you think about all those mental steps that a student has to take, this is going to be a lot of work for them. So, of course, math class can be a struggle for these folks, but other things outside of school can be a struggle for folks with dyscalculia as well. Managing money, reading a clock, managing time, measuring like cooking, crafts, building things, and then remembering just important numbers like addresses, phone numbers, if anyone has those memorized anymore. I sure don't. Scores in games. So there are just a lot of avenues where numbers and number sense kind of feed into our daily lives, and those can be struggles for folks with dyscalculia as well. So just to get, that was kind of a broader academic kind of look at it, but for a more kind of personal touch, these are some quotes from students that have dyscalculia that we wanted to share. I still depend on using my fingers for math, so trying to hide my hands under my desk during math class as I count is not ideal. Everyone thinks you're an idiot because you can't do basic math that everybody knows. Everyone says you're getting distracted and that you're not doing your work, but really you don't understand it. And then to show that sometimes folks with dyscalculia do like parts of math, finally, something with numbers made sense. It was such a breath of fresh air. I still love algebra. I think it's fun, but I can't tell you what anything plus anything is. So that just goes to show that there is, of course, a lot of variation in struggles, even with folks under the umbrella of dyscalculia. Sometimes certain parts of math really stick and really make sense, but like in this example, they can do algebra, but addition doesn't make sense to their brain.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here and share as well. So this first, hang on one sec, let me get where I can do so. All right. So this is meant to, I'm going to get it just to where it comes off one at a time for you. These are some of the messages that our students carry around with them, either things that they've thought themselves, things that they've heard teachers say and they internalize, things that they've heard parents say and they internalize, things they've heard tutors say and internalize. So some of the message they carry, we've been over this 1,000 times. If you just set your mind to it, everyone else gets it. And I will never be a math person, intentionally capitalizing NEVER. Yeah. So this with it just brings an abundance of shame. And the more I'm learning about shame, because my background is both in a therapeutic context, so as a therapist for adolescents, as well as a teacher in the classroom setting, shame is an incredibly powerful force. You throw ADHD in that mix and you have the negative sensitivity dysphoria piece. If you haven't heard of that, that's just extreme sensitivity to negative messaging. And shame can grow so quickly. Then you add dyscalculia on top of that with potential ADHD. And we've just got a hot mess on our hands, right? So how in the world do you parent this thing? This is a crazy disability to work through as a parent. And just to add a little humor to this, because I think we probably could use some, how to do math. You write the problem down and then you cry. And I bet you, if you're here, you've seen this before, and maybe you've done it yourself. Another one, mental abuse to humans. So what I originally tried to find actually was a video, just sort of a funny tongue-in-cheek video of a parent frustrated with their child tutoring them, but they were so sad to watch that I could not put it in here. There was a lot of yelling and a lot of frustration and a lot of just tears, and nobody wants to watch that. Many of you live that on a daily basis with math homework. So I figure let's not bring that into this reality. So the 4 C's of doing this well. So we've got curiosity, and I'm going to go through each one of these in detail. Connection, control, and competence. So these are the 4 pieces that are sort of the foundational soft skill type things. And then I'm going to get more into the, no, really, how do I actually teach this new math thing that I have no idea now how to do multiplication anymore, because it's weird. They do it weird now. So we'll get into some of those details, but this is more our foundational soft, like our emotional presence with our children. And what does that need to be like before we can even touch the math? So this comes long ahead of it. So curiosity about their experience. And another way of saying that, of course, is empathy. So what if, let's see if we can mess around with this assumption. What if your child was doing the absolute best that they could with their tools at hand? And even if it's their best, it's not working. And I don't know if you can feel the heaviness of that. And for me, it helps to play with something in my own life that I'm really not good at, for instance. And I'll do that. My husband is a really good potter, and I am a really bad potter. I cannot center the clay. I cannot reach my hands with enough force to the middle of the wheel because I have short little arms. I cannot do it well. But he thinks that I'm not listening, and he thinks that I should be able to do it better. And there's critique present. But no matter how hard I try, I feel like I absolutely cannot do it. Let's throw some peers in there that are like looking at me and laughing. I have to do it every single day, multiple times a day in there, and see how that feels. So you have your own stories of what you are not good at. And if you can imagine yourself in a role where You could get inside their frustration, right? What does it feel like to do that in front of your peers? What does it mean that it's never going to end? You have to take math every single year of school, pretty much till you get to be maybe a junior and senior in high school. Maybe then you can stop, but probably not, because you're probably behind, right? So it looks like it's never ending. And then I have at least 2 battles with this every day, one in school and one with my parents at home. So if you can, this is a heavy thing to carry around. And then you kind of think back to Emma's demonstration of how much mental energy it takes to do one measly little problem. And then you have a worksheet of 20. And that was in class. You got another 20 at home. So it gets really heavy really quickly, right? And brings a lot of emotions with it. So understanding that's important. The second piece is connecting with your kid. And, our motto for the tutoring, it took me a long time to come up with 3 words, but a wise business consultant told me in the very beginning, you have to have 3 words. And everybody that works for you needs to know those 3 words. They have to breathe them. They have to ooze them. And people who get served by you need to know what they are too, just experientially. And we chose connect, learn, grow. And it was in that order and for a very important reason. And this is where my therapeutic background comes in, is that connection must happen first before any profitable work can happen, right? And so this is a funny question, but do you need to stop doing math altogether with your child? Do you need to stop permanently? Do you need to stop just for tonight? Do you need to stop for the next 5 minutes? Do you need to stop? And so it can get so charged that the moment you like think the word math, your child can tell, and they're already on you, right? Or you're on them, they're on you. It gets ugly. If the word M is on your mouth, they know it's coming, and then all their hackles go up, right? And so I wonder what it would look like if you could be disengaging from the thing they hate with them and pivoting more often to the things that they love. So we only have so much time in an evening. And, elementary, maybe life's a little freer. Middle school gets a little fuller. High school gets really full. And plus, they probably don't want to listen to you and won't let you help them anyway. So that problem may have worked itself out of being a problem because they won't do their math with you anyhow. But in those small, tiny windows that you have to be able to connect to your kid, you're desperate for them to do this. They're really behind, and there's lots of good intent and lots of anxiety that can be in that picture on a parent's part, which bleeds into the kid. And so would you consider stopping? And again, that could be for 5 minutes. That could be for the whole next year. I don't know, because I don't know what your exact scenario would be, right? But this is just basic connection 101, right? But these 3 types of questions, the did you questions often get yes or no, and it's done. There's no more conversation, no more connection to be had. Did you have a math test today? Yes. Cool. Well, that's done. And then the why one is the one that your kid will likely really pivot from, because if you can sit in the word why for a minute and just feel it, it actually has an edge to it. It has well, you shouldn't have done that. And why didn't you do this other thing? Like it kind of has that, like there's a little, I don't know exactly how to put words to that, but I can feel an edge to why. And you're certainly going to have your kids feeling that, especially around math. So if you're doing a math problem with, let's say we're back in math for a second, and you say, why did you do it that way? And already they're on the defensive, right? Already hands up, hackles up, defense is up, fight or flight's up, reactions are up, and we're not going to have a good conversation. But what would it look like instead to say, can you tell me just a little bit more about how your brain worked in that one? Because what you got and what I got are not the same. I'm really curious about how you got to that spot, right? So there's no why involved in that. You're curious about their thinking process. But what's a good question just in general in life? I just did a what question. What was your brain doing? Or what was your favorite part of the day? Or, I think you've likely seen, and if you haven't, there's great lists of questions to ask and not ask when your kids come home from school. There's the shut down conversation questions, and there's the open up, have fun conversation questions. Bottom line, though, is sometimes we get so desperate to make a thing happen because we're really concerned about the unfolding of math, for instance. We know our kid loves science. They've always wanted to be a doctor, and they really stink at math. Oh my God, we got to get better at math. And their entire world and all the doors are closed, right? So there's lots of stirring that can happen. So we might treat connection. There could be a temptation. I'm going to connect. I'm going to connect. I'm going to connect. And now we're going to do math. And they will feel that pivot. If you manipulate that and I think there's such a thing as positive manipulation, but doing that too quickly is going to be sensed by them, and then further connection is going to be that much harder. So be careful with making that transactional and thinking like, okay, we've connected about really fun things. Now we're going to talk about math. So be careful of that transition point. We need to give those kiddos some control, because they feel very out of control when math is in front of them. And I do love the worksheet picture that Emma showed you, because the sense of lack of control and that much misery about to happen is really big. So can we give them some way of controlling their destiny with what's about to happen in their math stuff, right? So let them choose, and let's come up with the math plan together, right? But let's let them direct that plan as much as is possible. And perhaps you have to create some contained choices so that they don't say, well, I'm never gonna. So maybe it's between two things if you need to go that route, but let them have choice. So how we do math, does it have to be worksheets? And we'll get into some tools that our tutors use that make this a lot more fun. When we do math, and can you have a conversation with your kiddo to say, hey, I know math is the hardest, most terrible part of your day, and I can't take it out of your day, but when would be the best spot to do it for you? When are you the least hungry, the least tired, and the most brain ready to do this thing? When is that for you? I can't tell you when it is, but I think you feel it, right? So give them some sense of owning their own experience and knowing when it might be better. And they'll probably say never. And then we push a little and we say, well, never is not an option. So when's the next best choice, right? Where are we going to do it? And of course, there's all the without distractions, not behind a closed door in their bedroom if they're an elementary kid that needs help. With whom? Who's their, I don't know, who's the bad guy right now and who's the good guy of the pair? I don't know. My husband and I play off bad guy, good guy, and flip our roles all the time. And so will they have a choice between who to do it with? And how long before they get a break? And then, of course, we need to press into this for a certain chunk of time. And again, I can't say do this for 3 days, although I would say 3 days is a good amount of time to try a thing out, because one day it could suck. If it sucks the second day, it could be coincidental. If it sucks the third day, oh, then we have data, right? So maybe a 3-day trial, and then you readjust what's working, what's not working. And you talk about that, like not when they're tired and fried and right up against doing the math. Maybe this is a completely separate conversation, not tucked up right against the math window, right? Maybe you're just driving on the car on the way to soccer practice, right? Maybe it's some other scenario where you talk about how this is going to vibe for the week. Okay. The other thing is competence is a really big part of this. And then your child needing to feel their own sense of competence. Now, this could feel impossible in the face of math, but there's some things we can do to make it worse, and certainly some ideas and thoughts and things we can say to make this better. So the one thing you should never say, this is like, I don't know, this feels like some kind of email bait candy or like click on this or whatever, but really, truly, there is one thing you should never say to your kids when you're doing math. And let's see, how many people are here, Mary? It'd be fun just to Oh, you're muted. It's okay. What I would love to do, actually, let's take a stab at what, if you can think of one sentence that you think would be like a real not good thing to say to your kid when you're getting ready to do math, but
Yeah.
pretty tempting to say.
Throw it in the chat.
Throw it in the chat. Exactly.
All right.
So why
Yeah, we
don't
have
you throw
about
that?
13 extra people here besides us.
Okay. Yes.
Try
Oh, these are
harder. This is
good.
hard. Or this is easy.
This is so easy.
Come on, people, get in there. You have one.
You've said them before. I know it. It doesn't even have to be something you've said, because maybe you're an amazing math helping parent.
We're just brainstorming here, so focus. Would you just focus? Yeah. Don't forget. That's a good one. You may have heard your spouse say it. Hurry up.
Yeah, you didn't say this, so somebody else for sure.
Somebody else did. I don't understand why this is so hard. Why can't you remember this? Yeah, it's all coming in now. These are things you've heard your spouse say.
Perfect. All right, that's a pretty darn good list. All of which I would say are true, none of which are my answer.
Okay, what's your answer?
So my answer is this. I've always hated math too. Or I've never been good at math either. And here's why. What you're trying to do is a beautiful thing. You're trying to have empathy with your kid, right? Oh, my dog is in my office. I may have to get him out. He's very excited because my husband's home, so he has to tell me about it. Anyway, so your intent is empathy, which is beautiful, solid, a good parenting skill. The problem is the result is a fixed mindset, right? And so they think that bad at math equals a permanent, and for that matter, my parent just said it. So it's probably an inherited trait. I'm never getting rid of this bad at math thing. It's going to suck into eternity. Or it is never going to get better. I'm always going to hate it, right? And so I agree with everything that just went in that chat. And some of those, this is hard, I would say would be a really good empathetic statement, because it is. And I think letting him know that it is a really beautiful thing. I also think your empathy, I'm going to need to get my dog out of here. Well, just one moment, because he's going to cry a lot. I'll be right back.
That's okay. While you're doing that, guys, I just want it for all of you chaos-free families. Here's what I've heard so far is that we need a new perspective, right? Maybe their best effort is just not good enough at this point. They're doing their best, but it's just not getting them there. The second thing is what's first? The relationship. Always first. And that's exactly what we talk about chaos-free family. We need to give them control or some autonomy in these processes. We need to collaborate with them on finding a solution. And we need to change the process, not the kid, right? Something's not working. And it's very important that your child sees themselves as a part of the solution, that they can identify where their competence is, even if it's just very little competence at this point. Go ahead, Cindy.
So good. I love that our stuff melts together in that way. Yeah, so good. Let's see. Let me click on through here. Okay, so the message instead is that you can get better at math. You might need more time. You might need more creative tools, and you might need more support. But the bottom line is this is not a permanent situation. It doesn't have to be. It does require hard work. I'm not going to lie about that. But the work can matter. And I think restoring a sense of efficacy to our kids, meaning I know that when I try, it matters. That's a really powerful thing to experience. And somehow we have to figure out a way to restore a sense of efficacy to our kids in regards to math. So, normalizing, this is the most important thing on the screen, is red for a reason. Normalizing getting stuck as a part of moving towards competence in math in particular. That is almost a requirement for learning math. And I think when you're constantly stuck because you're walking through the mire of every problem is got all these baby procedural steps that to your buddy next to you, they already know 3 times 7 is 21. They didn't have to like finger it under the table and like do all this and then I can move on in the problem, right? So getting stuck is a lot easier, is a lot more prevalent with dyscalculia. So it has to be normal and it has to be okay to get stuck. If it is not, then they will be in a constant state of frustration. So we'll talk more about normalizing getting stuck here in a moment, but just in general, it is okay to get stuck. And man alive, does that require patience from you as a parent, because stuck is what's going to happen more than movement. Yeah. Okay. So the handoff. This is when you're like, okay, I can't, I'm done. Our relationship's struggling. I've tried to give my kid control. No matter what we design, I can't hold enough patience for this. And that is okay. It is a lot. And guess what? You might have dyscalculia. I don't know. So I have not read an absolute dyscalculia is a genetic trait that you can inherit, but I will not be surprised if that eventually comes down the pipeline as something that's just as strongly correlated as it is for ADHD. So anyway, so maybe you're not the right person for the job, right? And that is okay. You got lots of other really beautiful jobs to do with that kid. Math might not be one of them. Okay, so let's say we're kind of moving towards that conclusion. Also, and if you have a 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old, they by definition are learning to differentiate from you, and that's a beautiful thing. And they do not want your help. Thank you very much. They don't need your help. They don't want your help. And guess what? That's so good. It's so good, ultimately so good. And it really hurts. So I have a 15-year-old and she's 19 now. I have a 15 and a 19-year-old. My 15-year-old is very much, I do not need you for a single thing. So got to find a tutor with interpersonal skills that are gonna promote a healing journey. And it doesn't have to be a tutor. I'm just speaking from within that context. So please just generalize that, right? Because I own a tutoring company, that's my context. But it might be like a peer that really knows their stuff, or it might be grandma, or it might be your neighbor. I don't know, but get someone who's got some interpersonal skills that's going to promote a healing journey. And we're going to get into what I mean by that. So when your tutor or whoever it is knows dyscalculia, because that's a precursor, this is what we're hoping for, right? Is that as mastery increases, shame and anxiety are going down. Now, the way we do that with our tutors and how we train them is we play with the kids, meaning we are going to talk about stuff that they are masters in. I want them to feel their own mastery as they sit with me, despite the fact that they know I'm a math tutor. I want them to teach me about agates that they found at the beach and how they're formed and what colors they are. I just watched a video of this of one of our tutors who for a solid 7 minutes of a tutoring session feels like a waste of time. But what she's doing in those moments is all of that anxiety, fight or flight, panic, dread is doing this all the way down. So that when the hard moment comes, she's starting from a baseline of settled, calm, connected. And she just had her own moment of mastery, right? About another thing so that she could step into the uncomfortable spot of math. Right. And so getting them into their own skin of what they like and what they're a master of. And then additionally, of course, the role is to increase mastery mathematically so that shame and anxiety is going to decrease. All right. So another way we do that is, and this is ish the same thing, we talk about stuff they love. And then we tie it in with math problems. If they are in love with snakes and they have 7 snakes, 3 chameleons, and a tarantula, we're going to turn that into math problems galore, right? I mean, how much food do you have to get at the pet store? It costs this much. It does it. So just playing with what they like to play with and then throwing numbers in there. That's not magical, but it certainly helps. They at least sense that we're talking about something they love and that we're going to mess with numbers around something they love. Ideally with that, anxiety is going down, right? Because the amount of anxiety that's tied in with dyscalculia, math anxiety as a thing, is noted as a thing in the DSM-5 for therapists, right? Like it's a subcategory of something that you can be very afraid of, go into full fight or flight, have all kinds of crazy biological reactions to it, right? So we're trying to get that down because your ability to take in information and remember it is severely compromised when your stress levels are high. So will we waste not a whole session, but will we waste 7, 10, oh my gosh, maybe even 15 minutes doing this soft, connecting, tell me about what you love. How was your week? Yeah, we do. And it's really important. So the other piece, we already talked about this briefly, but we know that the person who works with your child has to be able to normalize getting stuck and not knowing things and failure. All of that just comes with the learning experience. It's a part of learning. It's not when learning goes bad. It's when learning is happening, right? It's required for learning, right? If you didn't have any struggle and you already knew, well, you didn't stink and learn anything. You already knew it, right? So there's no newness to what's going into your brain. So that's huge. Technical skills. So that's the soft components, yeah? So we want to do things that are going to decrease anxiety, increase mastery, and help that kid settle down enough to do a hard thing. Technical skills, and you as parents, this is some things you can take in and stuck in your tool belt. If you're like, I'm still in the game. I'm still going to try and help my kid out with this. I think I'm a really good person for the job. Then take some of these, right? If not, then a tutor needs to have these skills. So basic principle. There is lots of holes in the foundation when we get a kid who comes to us with dyscalculia. And this could have been like, here, we'll go backwards. This is the bad teacher in kindergarten. This is, they were sick a lot that year. That year that they did multiplication tables, yeah, that didn't happen. And then the pandemic happened. There's a lot of blackout happening in that whole period. And then, we're trying to build these concepts on top of that. That ain't going to work. And so that whole castle is crumbly, right? And so anything above those blackout levels has not a stable thing to land upon, right? So our first job is this. We have to rebuild the foundation. So a good instructor will be able to see, they won't necessarily jump in with the homework that's due tonight, right? That might be a real bad spot to start. It might be needed that there's some sort of assessment to determine, an assessment being like an interview, like a conversation, not like a big fat math test that your tutor hands off to this kid and says, do all these problems. I want to see how much you know. Oh my God. Stress, anxiety, and then even what they did know is not going to show up, right? So our tutors will get into a conversational style assessment. We go way back to the point where they can feel mastery. Maybe it's thinking 1 + 3. I don't know. We don't know how far we have to go back, but we're willing to go far enough back to where they're like, I know this one. I know how to do that, right? And so that's the spot we begin. All right. And then ideally, all that stuff goes away. We have a beautiful little castle, right? We got to get creative with numbers. That's another piece. So I'm going to show you just a super brief video. This is one of the ways. They're called Cuisinart rods. They're the name brand, but there's lots of other little wooden blocks that look the same. These are just the ones that I'm familiar with. So actually, I may have to stop sharing for just a moment and then click in to make sure you can hear the sound. Hang on 1 second. stop share and I'm going to restart the share. So you can see in that video, yeah, that there's a lot of creativity to be had in how you can do multiplication. You got to get your hands on things. Maybe your kid isn't a kid that needs to do this, but maybe they are, right? So they may have to literally move things around to see the numbers pan out. Maybe they need to play with stuff they love, like candy, because who doesn't love candy? So what that could look like is maybe they like Peachos, maybe they like Skittles, because I personally love both those things. They're some of my favorite candy. And maybe we have a problem like this, -4 + 2. Oh my goodness, negative numbers blow the mind of a dyscalculia kid. They blow the mind of any kid. But somebody who's got some struggles with number sense, and now we're going negative. Now we're, wait, that's a number that doesn't even exist, right? Like, what does it even mean to be a negative number? And so the O's, if you will, are the negative numbers. So that's -4. And we take these guys and we put them inside of there. And mind you, we're doing this with real candy that maybe they get to eat afterwards if they stick with us. How many holes are left? 2. So the answer is -2. Right? So can we start playing in that way? Right? And then we got things like we got to get visual. So this is negative numbers again, right? Piles and holes. We got 5 piles, 2 holes. If we took some of those piles, put them in the holes, how many piles do we have left? Right? So that's the kind of thing versus just seeing a straight up 5 plus -2. Holy criminy, what in the world do those numbers even mean? Remember, my concept of a number line is foggy, real foggy at best, right? So moving around on a number line is a really, really impossible thing to do for these kids. This one's super cool. I guarantee at least half of you in here have children that really struggled with their numbers in a times tables. It's the very first time, usually for a family where parents are like, my goodness, why can you not remember these things? And it's the first time math is timed in school. Most of the time, nothing happens with timing and like, you got to do it this quick until 3rd grade. And that's when it really hits the fan, because the time makes so much more stress on a process that's already difficult, right? So this is actually super cool. And I have a link in our resources that'll take you to one option of many where, like, this is Mrs. Week. She's Mrs. Week. She's number 7. She sat on a chair. It looks like a 4. And she caught 2 boots and 8 fish. Boom. 7 times 4 is 28. And you, if you don't have dyscalculia, you might be like, that is the most ridiculous thing. To remember that story is way harder than just remembering the numbers. Not for a kid with dyscalculia, it isn't. They can remember a story like nobody's business, especially compared to number facts, right? So that is, when I first saw it, I was like, that's ridiculous. But then when I watched some more videos of it and really got a sense of it, it makes good sense. Let's see. Here's the deal. What happens when your tutor doesn't know, or your neighbor, or your grandma, or maybe you, but now you do know. So no more excuses. When you don't know dyscalculia, yeah? What happens when that happens? The tutor might think it's the student's fault. They might start making assumptions like, they just don't listen to me. They're not engaged. If they would just like pay attention. Hello, we also have ADHD, potentially. The student, they just cannot remember a darn thing. Forget everything. They knew their multiplication facts yesterday for the 3s, and today they cannot do a single thing. They don't remember any of them. We spent 2 hours last night going over this. Tutor could think it's their own fault as the instructor. So I might not be able to help this child. So all this stuff I usually have, like patience, encouragement, creativity, and empathy, they all start disappearing. And then the kids' antenna for the disappearing of those things is so well tuned, y'all, because they've seen people's patience go away. They've seen their compassion go away. They've seen the frustration rise, and any hint of it, they know. They hear the tone of the voice. They watch the eyeballs moving the way they do. They see the body tense. They see all of that and take it in really quickly. And then the student's assumptions confirmed. I can't do math. And here's the tag on, though, even with help. And that can be devastating, right? Because even with help makes the hole feel deeper. All right, almost there. Emma, turning it over to you. Here, I'll stop sharing and you can start.
I'm back. So there we go. Now that's all loaded. So if you're like, hey, these two seem pretty smart. They know a lot about dyscalculia. Seems like they have some pretty cool tutors that know about dyscalculia too. Here's a little bit about what we do and how you can get in touch with us at STEM Tutoring. So we have math and science tutoring for 3rd grade all the way up through college. Work with students, of course, with or without learning differences. We do some supportive training for our tutors around ADHD and dyscalculia. Those are kind of where we put a lot of our attention for right now. And we do online tutoring for math and science. In Washington State, we have some in-person tutoring as well, if any of you happen to be watching from our home state. And then kind of a related but different thing that we do is we have a coaching business called Threshold Coaches, where we do academic coaching for college students with ADHD. So if you or anyone you know has a kid who's heading off to college, worried about how their ADHD might come into play in that world, we can help out with that as well, and we'd love to. So the way you can reach us for tutoring is if you go to our website, tutoringstem.com. I will pull that up. And there's this little contact us today in the upper right. That'll take you to just a little form. Tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about your student, what they're wanting some help with. And then we will get in touch there we go. We'll get in touch in about a business day. You will chat most likely with me to do a little more of an in-depth intake of what you notice about how your kid's doing in school, what's going on in math and science, what are things that are really important for the tutor to know to be able to connect with your student. What are they into? What are they good at? What do they love? So we'll talk about that. And then within about 7 business days, you will be in touch and having a first session with your tutor. So we've gotten a lot of great feedback from parents, which has been always really sweet to see, about how our tutors have just like endless patience when students are getting overwhelmed, helping to build self-confidence, that our tutors are really attuned to specific needs of a student with special needs. And when Cindy was sharing about, talking with students about things that they really love or things that they're really good at, it made me think of, we have one student who is so good at art. She draws for the entire tutoring session pretty much. And the tutor can kind of decode that and see what's going on with the student, like through their drawing, and they take drawing breaks. And I've seen some of the students' art and it's just like incredible. Do a lot of work of just, connecting with students, what makes them happy. So now we have time for questions. We also put together a little resource document. This link is live in the slides that you got, but I'll also pop it in the chat in just a second there. But yeah, if we have questions, now's the time. You muted, Mary.
All right, that's fabulous. Cindy, Emma, that was a great presentation. All you parents, now you know why I wanted them to come talk to you. All right, when we're having trouble with those math kind of problems, these are the people that we need to be seeking out, people who really understand our kids. And it's no mistake that we found each other because we're so aligned in what we think. And I already gave kind of my first take on that, but the other things is, what did they also say? Sometimes we got to go back and fill in the foundation. Where do we start when we're teaching kids a process? The minimum expectations first. When we excel with the basics, then we start adding complexity, right? So again, we're right on line with each other. And, we talked about what interests them. If you don't give them a place to shine and give them a place to express what's important to them, remember those conversations. But Mary, I do not want to hear about Minecraft for 30 minutes straight. It's like, look, I know more about making an oboe reed than anybody who doesn't play one should, right? Sometimes we have to talk about what's important to them. So, all right. So I've given you guys just a few minutes with my recap about what's going on. Let's talk about, we did have one parent say the Times Tales, that they really loved it. It was a game changer for them. So whoever has a question, you can wave at the screen or you can put your hand up in the participant window. Adrian, you want to get us started off?
This was so great. I really appreciate it. I guess it's a really silly question, but who tells you if your child has dyscalculia? Like my child has gone through the testing process at school. He now has an IEP, and I've not heard that word, but we are very much familiar with everything that you're talking about with the homework and all of the above.
Yeah, so the same folks that would diagnose ADHD are going to be the professionals that should be able to I think they should be able to diagnose dyscalculia. So it is definitely not as well known. There is a deep and profound need for better diagnostics and better diagnosticians out there in regards to dyscalculia. In our small town, we live in Bellingham, Washington, which is halfway between Seattle and Vancouver, BC. And it's one of those small town, big towns that I don't know that I would necessarily send them to anyone here. We'd probably go to Seattle. I do send people to Seattle to our neuropsych down there that works with this. And she's the one who actually trained our staff on dyscalculia originally. So they are tough to find. And I guess I wouldn't immediately assume that an ADHD person could diagnose it. But, anything with PsyD, MD, I would say probably not. Like a doctor, not. And Mary, you probably have some really solid advice on this too.
Yeah, for this one in particularly, I would, if the school, again, if they, like Cindy said, if the diagnostician at the school doesn't really understand it and have a lot of experience diagnosing it and evaluating for it, I would go over to Diagnostic Learning Center in Plano. And you can ask them just for that. You can say, hey, look, I have got everything else, but we think that there's a math problem. And I think that they can just evaluate you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's a really good question, actually.
Yeah, there's one comment that says, my son's IEP says SLD of math problem solving and no mention of dyscalculia.
SLD.
Capital SLD. Megan, you want to come on and tell me what did that mean?
So dyslexia, my understanding is dyslexia is called SLD of reading, I believe. And so I was told dyscalculia is SLD of math problem solving. And the way it was explained to me is that dyscalculia is more of a medical diagnosis, which schools cannot legally do. Yeah. So they call it SLD of math problem solving, which is an educational diagnosis. I don't know if that's 100% correct, but that's kind of the gist I've gotten with this over the year, that if you have an SLD of math problem solving, it's basically dyscalculia.
Yeah. I know the diagnosticians at the school can tell you, hey, everything is pointing at ADHD, but a doctor's going to have to tell you that.
Right.
I know that. Look, I'm not going to speak for Kids First, but I can't see Kids First seeing that and going, yeah, he's got dyscalculia. I can't see the doctors having enough experience to say that, but I can see the people over at Diagnostic Learning Services having enough to say that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. And just in case, I don't know if everyone knows what SLD stands for, but it stands for specific learning disability. Okay. So, yeah.
All right. Anybody else have any questions? Or here's one. How many math teachers, professors do you think are familiar with dyscalculia?
Not enough. I mean, I honestly,
Yeah.
I would never assume that they are. I would always assume that they aren't. I think that's your safer assumption, honestly. I
Yeah.
know that it's not taught in teaching training programs. I can't say in any of them, but geez, like ADHD itself, which is significant, it could only be given like maybe a day, maybe a unit. If you're really, really lucky, then a teacher's gotten like multiple hours on ADHD. Now, dyscalculia, even though you're training to be a secondary math instructor,
Yeah.
I don't know because I'm not in those programs, but I would
Right.
bet that it's not happening.
Right. We know if you're in the Denton or Louisville schools here, none of the teacher in service days continuing education include ADHD, and I doubt if they have dyscalculia.
Yeah.
Okay. As with dyslexia, there is a specific type of curriculum, OG, MTA. Oh, is there something for dyscalculia? You know, like we have MTA or what is it? New Horizon, a Head Start. No, Take Flight. That's another one.
For dyslexia.
For dyslexia. Is there something like that for dyscalculia in the schools? I've never heard of it.
Nope.
Yeah, Adrian, I'm just going to ask, have you ever heard of something like that? All I've heard of is content mastery. If you're bad at math, you got to go down to the content mastery room.
Right. That's I've never heard of anything like that.
Okay. Yeah.
My other son has dyslexia. He's in Take Flight, but I don't think there's anything for him even specifically for dysgraphia. And he's in 3rd grade. We're starting to see these math issues. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else have some questions? We've got plenty of time left for questions. Gina, yeah.
So, hi, Cindy. Nice job. It was so wonderful. Yeah, very
Thank
good.
you.
So, is there, I just lost my question. Oh my God.
It's
I
okay.
was so good. It'll come back to me. It'll
All
come
right,
back to me.
somebody
Someone
take
else
her
jump in.
place. Somebody
Oh
take
my
her
God.
place while she's thinking of it. It's been a long day for Gina. It's been a long day for her. So, yeah. So, anybody else? You be thinking about that. Look, here's what I want to say about it, right? Math is one of those things that builds on itself every year, right? If we don't get what we need in the 1st grade and we are made to struggle through every single thing, there's going to be a lot of things we don't know. And when we get to 2nd grade, we're starting already behind, right? And so I see parents, hey, we're going to get a tutor. It's the high school student down the street. I'm not saying high school students down the street can't relate to your kid, but if they don't understand this, if they don't understand ADHD, the help they're going to be able to give is limited, right? And so don't wait on this. This is not something that gets better on its own. It's not something that works out in the end. It's something that continues to multiply on itself and build and snowball on itself. And so does that anxiety, that guilt, that shame of why I can't do this when everybody else around me is doing it, right? So that's my one thing that I'm going to say is please don't, if your child is struggling in math right now, get them a tutor that knows what the heck they're doing and get them on board, right? I'm just going to say one personal thing from my personal life. When our daughter, Melissa, went into Briar Hill and she was in 5th grade, was atrocious at math. And she had a 6th grade teacher that connected with her, that showed her how to do these things. She's a math whiz. I mean, math was never a problem after that, after somebody just showed her what is happening in math, right? How this stuff works. And what a boost that was to her just overall in her life, right? These troubles in math have a way of bleeding into being troubles everywhere in their life. They damage, they take all your energy out where you just now I just don't even have the energy to fight in English. I don't have the energy to fight for it in science, in physics, and the things I really wanted, right? So don't wait. Don't wait for these things. Gina, did you remember your question?
Yeah, and I don't know if you have an answer, Cindy or Mary, but my question was, do educational therapists receive training in this? And could an educational therapist be a place to go for help? Because it's different than academic coaching. They have different training. So I was,
I don't have an answer.
See, I'm not sure that I have an answer either. I mean, I don't, again, you know, as with any of the people that can diagnose learning differences, some can, some can't. So I'm sure there are some out there, but I don't know that it's incorporated into their training. And what's crazy about this, it's very much growing in its in being known, right, in the math community, but
Yeah.
it's not at all anywhere close to the level that dyslexia is known. It's just not even, it's like barely a whisper, right? And so I mean, I think to the extent that a learning therapist, oh sorry, that's the term, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is, you know,
educational
that
therapist.
Educational therapy.
educational therapist, sorry, is just super solid at compassionate understanding difficulty in the educational context. Like I think they could broad base hold this. The soft skills would be there, right? But the math skills is where it gets rough, right? That's where the technicality comes in, depending on what level of math you're talking about. Then it's just going to be out of their realm because you start getting too close into a specific subject matter that's, you know, especially once you hit middle school. I'd say that's the definite cutoff of like, oh boy, we got to have somebody who knows math, not just a kind person who can help me with my multiplication tables, right?
Okay, let's take one more question. Peter, you want to finish us off here?
Well, this isn't to be competitive or anything, but I've been looking at this question for our granddaughter Aubrey, and I have a very strong math background, and I was trying to diagnose what was going on. There was some problems with her class and everything, and in the last week we've taken her out of school and we're homeschooling her. In doing that, we found a math tutor that works with a certified dyslexia reading program. And what I found, okay, what I found is some of the same things that I was trying to teach Aubrey, long division, okay? They approached it as she doesn't have the executive function and the short-term memory to just look at that. So they've built a whole program around mnemonics. So, you know, it was, I forget what it was. It was first division, then multiplication, then, you know, and they had this picture and words and stuff that were trying to do the same thing that I was trying to do just from a math basis. So she's started that program now, and that's what they're doing is teaching her memory. I don't know, pictures and memory tricks and stuff to go through that. So I'm just sort of interested in your take on that. Does that correspond to the type of things you do? And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, it very much corresponds. I think anything that gets their mind off of the symbol itself and attaching the symbol to something that has meaning in their brain, whether that be a picture, a story, you know, some it has to, you have to hook the memory to something else, because the memory will not hold if it only has the symbol to hold on to. So they're creating a medium to move through that hopefully has some barbs in it for that brain to hold on.
Yeah.
Right? So that makes perfect sense. I'm excited for your granddaughter. I think she's going to learn a lot. And again, you saying that you're a math-minded person, right? Like, some of that feels really tedious, because it's like, that's just a whole nother set of things to have to remember. Good God, just remember the numbers. It feels more simple, right? But for a dyscalculic brain, they've got to have hooks and other meaning. And so that's what they're creating for them. That's super cool. Yeah.
I'm not expecting her to do it. I'm neurodiverse anyway. So it's been beaten into me not to expect the way I see things to be the way other people see things. So I didn't come at it from that. And I had talked with Mary about some of this in some of our other sessions.
Mm-hmm.
I was really trying to figure out a different way. Was there a known way forward rather than I couldn't reinvent that. I couldn't invent that wheel, no less reinvent it. And what I was doing, I didn't give it a big chance of success. I was trying to stay as patient and everything as possible and walk her through thought processes. But again, I don't expect the world to see things the way I do. So I didn't think that was the best way to go about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, Peter. All right. Thank you, everyone who's hung in there. I appreciate it. Cindy, Emma, let me just thank you one more time for coming and talking to these parents and allowing us to record this and send it out to the people who couldn't come. Tomorrow, when I send out the recording, I will make sure that all of their contact information is in there. And I say this every time we have one of these talks. If you need a math tutor, a dyslexic tutor, a tutor for going off to college, call these women. You're not going to hurt my feelings. Okay? I am 16 and under with parents. Okay? And I'm not a tutor. I'm a math minor, but it's got its own little history and path in my brain. I can't teach it. So, again, I'm doing this to make sure you know there's other help out there, and I want you to take advantage of it, okay? Everyone, thank you again so much. Cindy, Emma, again, my best. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.